Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macie Renae, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hello, good morning, and welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. I'm Macie Renae, and I am so excited to have you here with me this morning, no matter where you're listening from in the world. So, before we get started on the topic, I just wanted to say really quickly, thank you to all of you who registered and attended the 5 Skills for Winning the War Against Yourself free webinar that I did this past Thursday. It was so much fun. I had a blast just teaching and coaching. Thank you to everybody that got on live. And also, if you didn't get to catch the live, but you were registered on the list, you also received a replay. And that replay will be taken down later tonight at midnight, probably very early Tuesday morning. So make sure that you go and watch that. And then the second announcement is that the Equip Society, which is my group coaching program to be able to continue this work that you're learning on the podcast and build your emotional intelligence, the next enrollment period will start October 1st. So you can no longer just join that program whenever you want. It used to be open all the time. Now that is not the case. There are only certain times in the year where you can get in, and you have to join during an enrollment period. Otherwise, you need to be on a wait list for it. So with that being said, if you've been interested in continuing this work together and you're wanting a super affordable way to do so, the Equip Society is the place to be. It's a one-time investment of $3,000. Once you pay it, you're done. You have lifetime access to the content. You have me coaching every single week in there and much, much more. So it is the place to be to get the bang for your buck and continue this work if you enjoy the podcast. And if you're wanting to go from taking in information to actually applying implementation, because there's a big difference, you guys. It's, when people say, I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it, it often means that they know the work that needs to be done, but there's no implementation. And do not underestimate the power of coaching in that implementation process to go from confusion and keeping yourself away from the things that are going to help you to getting yourself motivated to do so. And I think a group program is a perfect way whenever you're surrounded by peers who are all doing that work alongside of you. So everybody's on their own journey, but when you have everybody showing up, it creates this collective energy, and it can really help boost you forward, especially if you are someone that struggles to get yourself up and moving, okay? All right, so today we're going to talk about over-apologizing. We're going to talk about mom guilt and also wife guilt, and really just guilt in general. And this has been coming up in client calls, and it was kind of funny because after it came up in a bunch of client calls earlier this week, I also had someone message me about if I could cover this topic on the podcast. And I told this person, it's so funny that you reached out because actually it really does need to be a podcast episode. So how many of you are guilty of just over apologizing in your life, or really battling a lot of guilt? And I noticed that it's a lot of times mothers, it's a lot of times wives, or just, if you're in a relationship, a lot of times there's partner guilt. And then there's a lot of over apologizing that happens along the way. So the first thing that I want to dive into is really why we feel guilt in the first place. And I was talking to a client about this. So think about something that just makes you feel guilty, okay? Like someone who makes you feel guilty, or a circumstance that makes you feel guilty, or, you end up in a situation where the emotion that's circulating in your body is guilt. A lot of times, and this is not every single time, but what I have found in coaching people for 4 years is that most times guilt comes from expectations that either A, someone else has for you that you don't feel that you're meeting, or B, I don't know if I said A or B or 1 or 2 or whatever I said. The second reason is due to you having expectations for yourself that you feel you have not met. Okay, so guilt is a messy emotion, and it oftentimes feels very heavy, but a lot of times it comes from unmet expectations, whether that is the person that you're wanting to please, so kind of like people pleasing comes into play here, or if it's coming from how you will feel if you don't do said thing, or if you go back on maybe what you originally planned to do, and anticipating that if you do it, you're going to feel guilty, okay? So it comes up all of the time. Guilt is one of those emotions that are a little bit sticky. With wives, it could be guilt around intimacy, right? Or lack thereof. It could be around working lots of hours and being away from your kiddo more than you desire to be. It could be around, rules that you're breaking in your life according to people who really love you and think you should be doing it a different way. It could be in the way you walk, in the way you talk, in the way you dress, in the way that you show up. It could be in your personality. It could be a bunch of different things that make you feel guilt. And what I have found also is that your brain believes that there is a right way to do something, okay? So oftentimes when clients come to me and they say, I feel guilty for whatever it is that they tell me, I'm like, okay, tell me a little bit more about that. And they'll go in and explain the details of the situation or the person or the conversations that they've had. And almost always it comes down to their brain believing that there was a right way because somebody else believes that there was a right way and they didn't follow it, or because they believe that there is a right way. So I'm trying to think of an example of this. It'd be like, let's say that you are divorced and you start dating again. And maybe there are people that really disapprove of the fact that you're dating because everybody has a different rule on how long that should take. Okay, so some people might be like, wow, that's really soon. You moved on within 6 months of your divorce. Or another person could be like, wow, that was really fast. You moved on a year into, your divorce. Whatever. Everybody has a different number for that. If you moved on within 3 weeks of your divorce, then people are going to have an opinion on it, right? And there's going to be people who probably let you know. And if the receiving emotion that you feel is guilt, it's because you believe that there is obviously a right way to do something, and you are clearly doing it the wrong way, okay? And so there will be guilt in your body because your brain is telling you, I'm obviously doing it the wrong way, because either other people are not approving of this and are questioning it, or there's even a part of me where I'm questioning it. I'm questioning my pace. I'm questioning if I should move on this quickly, whatever quickly may look like for you, okay? With moms, a lot of times, it's even the amount of self-care that you're willing to give yourself. So you might feel guilt because you give yourself time to, go get your hair done, go get your nails done, go schedule a massage or a pedicure, or, take an hour for your coaching call, or, whatever it is that you need to do for yourself. You go on a run, you go work out for a few hours each day, or whatever it is, depending on your home life and situation and the support you do or do not have. If you go to do something, a lot of times for women, they will feel an immense amount of guilt. And if I ask them, why do you feel guilty? They'll be like, well, I should be spending more time with my family, or I should be doing laundry or the dishes or cleaning the house or making, meals or prepping something. Like, there's always something I could be doing. And I'm like, do you hear yourself? You're literally shoulding on yourself. Like, when I say shoulding on yourself, I mean, it's whenever you say things like, I should be doing this, or I shouldn't be doing that, or whatever it is. You should and shouldn't all over yourself. So we refer to that as shoulding on yourself. Okay. And it's not helpful, because should is just an invisible rule book. It goes back to, there's something that you believe you should be doing differently. Okay, believing that the way that you're doing something is obviously the wrong way, and you should or shouldn't be doing it however you're doing it. Okay, I should be doing it differently, or I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't be spending this much time away from my family. I shouldn't be, putting myself first. Is that even true? Like, I really want you to think about, because this is something I also see in my clients, I really want you to think about how you show up when you're depleted versus when your cup is full. And from what I know in coaching my clients, showing up depleted never serves anybody long term. Okay, because by the time you're depleted, it has now run over into your marriage, into your intimacy, into your communication, into how well you all are getting along or enjoying each other's company. It rolls into how present you actually feel whenever your kids are asking for attention from you. It rolls into a million pieces of your life. Okay, when you're not taking care of you and you're putting your needs on the back burner because guilt is a primary emotion, okay, whenever you do that, you are then setting yourself up for more anxiety, more panic, more like self-sabotage, because your brain is telling you that the way that you're operating is not the right way, especially if you were to give yourself time. And I want to challenge you to think about if that's true, that it's selfish or not okay for you to give yourself what you need. Because what I witness in clients, by the time that they hire me and they come to me, a lot of times they're depleted because their brain has told them for years that they shouldn't put themselves first, that they shouldn't take time away from kids. The biggest one I actually see in consults is I shouldn't spend this money on myself. That's probably the biggest. I should not spend this money on myself. It could go to my kids. It could go to whatever it is. Like, it could go to my daughter's wedding. It could go to my kids' school. It could go to, my husband and I taking like a little trip together. It could go to something my husband wants to do. Like, oftentimes women are like, I just shouldn't spend this time or money on myself. But what's interesting about that, whenever they say that, is that they would also rate many areas of their life. Like, if I ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your mental and emotional health, they'll tell me like it's a 3. And I'm like, that's really interesting that you would choose to think that it's not important to spend the time or money on yourself, and yet you're going to move on with your mental and emotional health as a 3. That's very, very interesting, right? Just to see how their brain kind of works. And it's like, how well is that working for you? Is that working for you right now? In being at that, that place in your life, does it feel like it's working? And most times it's not, right? There's a reason it's not working, and it's not working because they're often depleted. Okay. And they feel a lot of guilt in whatever it would take to move them forward because their brain has rules about I shouldn't do that or I should be doing this instead, whatever it is in any area of their life. Okay. And so with this comes a lot of times this need to over apologize and say sorry for a lot of things that are not always necessary. And so if we think about why we over apologize too, over apologizing from what I have observed years and years of doing this work, and even for me, like I used to be a big over apologizer, and it was always from a place of people pleasing. Like, I should say sorry for this because, so-and-so is going to be upset, or they're going to think this, or they might be thinking this thing. And here's this little side note, but it's kind of funny. I was talking to a client about this. I'm like, a lot of times the things that we feel guilt or shame or, the things that we over apologize for, a lot of times, like whatever we're telling ourselves in our mind, like they're going to be upset or they're going to think this about me, it's usually not true. I mean, there are times where maybe the person is thinking what you think they're thinking, but a lot of times people are very self-centered and they're not even thinking about you. Like that's most times what's happening, or they just really don't care that much. And so our brain will offer us a lot of stories that are not serving us whatsoever to protect us. So going back to over apologizing, if you think about why we do this, why we say sorry for a lot of things, it's a lot of times coming from a people pleasing behavior. And if we don't, it runs over into the guilt that we may feel. And also in over apologizing, we tend to over explain our reasons for something. So we anticipate that maybe the reason we're giving isn't good enough, or that the person on the receiving end won't understand. And so in order to let them know that we're quote unquote serious, we will over apologize. And it comes from being way in our heads a lot of times if we're doing it excessively. Like just, I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry. There's a difference between apologizing because it's actually necessary and, can be a part of our emotional intelligence, and over apologizing as more of a trauma response in I don't want them to be upset with me. I don't like the feeling of feeling guilt in my body. I don't want to disappoint anybody. I don't want anybody to be upset with me. And so that is more of a people-pleasing reason of why we will over-apologize a lot. So I wanted to bring your awareness to this because I do notice that it comes up a lot for a lot of people. So whenever you're feeling any kind of guilt, I want you to think about what rules your brain is offering that you quote unquote, need to be following, and asking yourself if that is true. Do you love your reasons for following those? I call them kind of like invisible rules that live in your brain. Okay. If you do follow them, then you think you're going to be less guilty or feel less guilty. If you don't follow them, then you're going to feel the guilt. What if you just allowed yourself the feeling of feeling any emotion that came up in your body, including guilt? Okay, what if guilt is not necessarily a problem? What if it's not necessarily a bad emotion that you could feel? What would you do if you weren't worried ahead of time about feeling guilt? Or what if you just let the guilt in the moment be in your body? Then what, right? What decisions would you make if you knew it's okay? Because think about why you might feel guilty for taking time for yourself, why you might feel guilty spending money on yourself, why you might feel guilty for decisions that you're making. A lot of times it's because of the invisible rule book in your brain of, I'm going to make other people feel a certain type of way, or when they respond, to the things that I'm doing, like it's going to make me feel a certain way. So what if you were just willing to feel the emotion? Then you could navigate through grief. What if you were willing to feel the discomfort of not people pleasing? Then you probably wouldn't feel the need to over apologize. So these are things to think about because they do come up. It's very natural and very human for these things to come up. But I want you to deeply reflect on what things are you feeling guilty about, okay? And whatever it is that's making you feel guilty, is there anything that you could be doing to combat that guilt? Okay, so to give you an example before we get off of here, maybe the guilt is that you're not as present with your family as you want to be. So I want you to get clear. Why are you not being as present with your family as you want to be? And maybe the reason that you're not as present with your family as you desire is because you're in a very hard mental and emotional space. And it feels really hard to get up out of bed, and it feels really hard to get yourself moving and to not have your brain racing 1,000,000 miles a minute when you're physically with your family. And so even though you're surrounded by your family, you don't feel present with your family and you feel guilt about that. Okay, so if that is the case, what will move you forward? What do you need in order to support your mental and emotional health? And are you doing those things? Okay, another reason that maybe people feel guilt, maybe you and your partner are in a rough patch. You're not talking and communicating the way that you did when you first, were in the relationship. Maybe your intimacy is not there. So you have to ask yourself, why is that the case? What has, changed to get us to this point? And maybe you're feeling guilty because you're not in the place that you want to be with that. Get really clear on the reasons. Now, are the reasons that you're feeling guilty for those things because you're making up self-sabotaging stories in your mind? Like, has your partner actually said something to you, or have they not? So if they haven't, then you have to, think of what things you might be assuming they're thinking. Just because you assume doesn't mean it's true. Okay? And if they have brought it up to you, things that they're not happy with and things that they think you should improve, and you're feeling guilty for it, again, you always have to go back to how you got yourself here in the first place. Okay? Sure, there are moments where things are a team effort, specifically speaking on relationships. But remember, we're responsible for where we are. Okay? We're responsible. Every day we have a choice. If you're living in misery, there comes a point in time where you're choosing it. Okay? Because you have the power and the opportunity to make different decisions. It doesn't mean that they would be easy. This is like the episode that I have called Choose Your Hard. There are times in your life where you have to choose your hard, and choosing your hard is a very difficult thing to do. For instance, to give you a quick example, you might be in a relationship that is very, very challenging, and you know in your soul that you would be better off moving on, okay? But to leave and maybe be on your own would be very, very hard, because you wouldn't understand like how you were going to, take care of yourself the same way, or the finances would be very difficult. I come across this all the time on consults with women that are extremely unhappy in their relationship or on their way to divorce. I've even had clients like this on their way to divorce or want to be, but they're really, really afraid because they financially don't know how they're going to do it alone. They have kids involved. They don't know how the relationship is going to look once they do. They don't know what they're going to do with their life if they've been, like a stay-at-home mom, okay? And I always tell them, I'm like, yeah, you're right. That would be hard. Leaving would be hard. But you know what's also hard? Staying in a relationship where you're withering away and you're unhappy and you're not working to fix it and you're not doing anything to improve it. And so every day you're on a hamster wheel of it being your life where you're feeling the same feelings and thinking the same thoughts. And we know that if you think the same thoughts and you feel the same feelings, you create the same results. So what you're looking at is another 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of getting the exact same situation, just over and over and over again, staying in the exact same situation because you're not changing anything. And that's also hard because if you think 5 years into the future and you're currently miserable, do you want to be miserable another 5? Oftentimes they will tell me no. But there are 2 hards to choose from. One where you leave everything behind and you really don't have that crystal ball to know what's next. And one where you stay and you know exactly what to expect and you're miserable. Both are hard. And what the brain does is it chooses the one that is just a little tiny bit easier, okay? And the one that's just a little bit more comfortable. That's what it does. So it sees both hards, but it chooses the one that's just a little bit easier to bear. And sometimes that's staying in a relationship you're really unhappy with because at least it's predictable. I always say there will come a day where you're ready to draw your line in the sand and you're ready to choose the opposite hard, because the hard that used to be kind of easy becomes not so easy anymore. And the one that you were originally choosing becomes even harder than the opposite. So let's say you get to a point where one day you realize, I can't lose myself anymore in this relationship I'm miserable in. And even though it would be hard to walk away and I don't have, everything figured out financially, mentally, emotionally with my kids, I do know that I can't stay in this hard anymore. I am done. And so in that moment, it's kind of like if you were looking at a set of scales, where it had been leaning one way for 20 years or 10 years or whatever, and then all of a sudden you remove the weight from that side and it flips to the other side. And you just decide, you know what, I'm choosing the other hard because staying is now harder than walking away. And I have watched clients walk this walk, and it's not something that is easy. And usually there is hard on the other side of it, as to be expected, okay? But I really, that's something to really think about and consider whenever you're in a state of, guilt and over apologizing and people pleasing. It's just another thing that we really have to think about in our journey to healing ourselves and making sure that we are taking care of our mental and emotional well-being. So if this episode resonates with you, or you know anybody that could benefit from it, pass it along, share with your friends. And if I can support you in any way, just know that you can always sign up for a free 60-minute consult on MacieRenae.com. And if you want to do this work together, then you can learn more about how I work with people on MacieRenae.com, but also just remember the Equip Society, which is my group coaching program, is opening up for enrollment October 1st. Okay, so check out all of that on the website. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macie Renae Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at MacieRenae.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at MacieRenae.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day.